Paige, the second quarter was a tough one. Just what were some of the things that you saw that led to the Fever having such a...
The Indiana Fever's recent game against the New York Liberty was a revealing one, showcasing both the team's competitive potential and their glaring weaknesses. Despite a valiant effort for much of the game, the Fever ultimately fell short, once again succumbing to a fourth-quarter collapse that has become far too familiar in the post-game analysis. One key issue that stood out was the failure to consistently leverage hot players, especially when the game was on the line. This flaw goes beyond just a single game. It speaks to a larger systemic problem within the team, one that could be holding them back from taking the next step. The root of the problem: head coach Stephanie White's reluctance to ride the hot hand and prioritize the players who are delivering in high-pressure moments. This issue was highlighted by Caitlin Clark, who, in a recent interview, pointed out the dissonance between what the Fever need and how White runs her offense. Clark, one of the brightest young stars in the WNBA, made an observation that struck a chord with many fans. White, as a coach, is simply not the type to keep feeding the ball to players who are cooking offensively, even if they're on fire. In fact, she claimed that White's coaching philosophy leans against hero ball, the practice of giving a red-hot player extended opportunities to take over a game. This philosophy is problematic, especially when you have players like Kelsey, Mitchell and Sylvia Cunningham, who have the ability to carry a team on their backs during a game. Both players demonstrated this against the Liberty, with Mitchell putting up an explosive performance throughout the game, and Cunningham showing lights out shooting from the three-point line. Yet, when the game entered its most critical stages, neither player received the ball enough. Mitchell, who had been scoring effortlessly, wasn't given the same chances in the fourth quarter. And Cunningham, who had shot 5-for-8 from beyond the arc, wasn't drawn up plays for the entire final stretch. It was as if the Fever coaching staff simply didn't want to rely on their hot shooters in the game's most pivotal moments. What this boils down to is a fundamental issue in White's coaching approach: her insistence on team basketball at the expense of individual brilliance. While there's no doubt that a balanced offense is important, there are times when it becomes clear that certain players need to be the focal point. This isn't about turning the game into hero ball for the sake of ego or flash. This is about recognizing when a player is hot and giving them the opportunity to close out the game. Whether it's Mitchell or Cunningham, if they are in a rhythm, the game plan should revolve around getting them more shots. Instead, the Fever continually pass the ball around, allowing other, less reliable shooters to take ill-advised attempts, which stifles the flow of the offense. The problem isn't isolated to Mitchell and Cunningham. If we're being honest, it's evident when you watch the Fever that the team doesn't prioritize feeding the hot hand in general. Too often, plays seem random and disconnected, with no focus on putting the ball in the hands of players who are consistently scoring. In critical moments, you need your best players to get as many touches as possible, and right now, it seems like the Fever are hesitant to trust their best players in those moments. Stephanie White's unwillingness to let her stars dominate and take over the game isn't just a small coaching quirk, it's a major flaw. This is especially clear when you consider the wider trend in basketball, both in the WNBA and the NBA, where more and more teams are leaning into isolation basketball and giving their superstars the keys to close out games. Gone are the days when a team wins by passing the ball around in an attempt to get the best shot for everyone. In today's game, the best teams are the ones who know when to clear the floor and give their superstar the opportunity to make plays. The Fever have two such players in Mitchell and Cunningham, yet the team's offensive system consistently fails to capitalize on this. Furthermore, this issue isn't limited to just the offensive end. The Fever's overall style of play in the fourth quarter, where the game slows down, the offense stagnates, and they keep reverting to underperforming players, is a recipe for disaster. Too many times, the Fever's coaching staff has tried to force a balanced attack even when that isn't working, and as a result, they allow the game to slip away in the final moments. If Kelsey Mitchell is lighting up the scoreboard, you need to give her the ball. Plain and simple. Similarly, if Cunningham is knocking down threes, you need to find ways to create more open looks for her. These are the players who should be taking over, but instead, they're frequently left watching as the offense fizzles out. Beyond the game itself, there is another issue that has raised eyebrows: the handling of Caitlin Clark's injury. The Fever, when Clark first went down with an injury, labeled her status as questionable for the next game, even though she clearly wasn't ready to return. This misleading designation left fans uncertain about her recovery timeline, which isn't fair to the team or the fans. Questionable implies a chance she could play, but it quickly became apparent that Clark would be sidelined for an extended period. This situation has repeated itself in the past, with the Fever's official injury reports sometimes being vague or not fully transparent about a player's status. The team needs to be more forthright with their updates. Fans deserve to know how long a player like Clark will be out, especially given the importance she holds for the team's success. The frustration surrounding Clark's injury and the Fever's treatment of it underscores a broader problem with how the organization communicates with its fan base. While injuries are inevitable in professional sports, transparency is key. Fans should be able to trust that when a player is out, they're given a clear timeline, not vague terminology that leaves them guessing. This lack of transparency adds another layer of disappointment for a fan base that already has to endure a team struggling with consistency. With all this in mind, the Indiana Fever are clearly in a rebuilding phase, and their ceiling for success will be determined by how well they can develop their young talent and adjust their game plan. However, the issue of prioritizing hot players, particularly Mitchell and Cunningham, remains a serious obstacle. As long as Stephanie White continues to shy away from giving her best players the ball when they're in rhythm, the Fever will continue to fall short in close games. The team has the talent to compete, but they need a coach who's willing to adjust and allow their stars to shine when it matters most.
Yeah, it's fun. Anytime we can compete against each other. We're two competitors who just want to win and who have grown up to be playing against each other.
The Indiana Fever have been struggling this season, and it was evident once again in their loss to the New York Liberty. Despite putting up a surprisingly competitive performance for most of the game, the Fever collapsed in the fourth quarter, as they have been prone to do. The main issue seems to be the coaching decisions, particularly under head coach Stephanie White. There are several glaring issues with the way the team is being managed, which, unfortunately, have not been addressed. One of the most frustrating problems with the Fever is the lack of attention given to players who are performing well, particularly in the latter stages of the game. It's clear that there are certain players on this team who can take over a game, but for some reason, they aren't being utilized when it matters most. A good example is Kelsey Mitchell, who was on fire for most of the game against the Liberty. She was hitting shots left and right, but when the fourth quarter rolled around, there were no plays drawn up for her. Similarly, Sylvia Cunningham, who had a hot hand from three-point range, was practically ignored in the fourth quarter. She was shooting 5 for 8 from beyond the arc, yet there was no attempt to get her the ball for another look. This seems to be a recurring issue for the Fever. They do not prioritize feeding the hot hand. It's not uncommon for teams to ride the momentum of a player who's heating up, but the Fever rarely do this. Instead, there's a tendency to spread the ball around to everyone, even if that means leaving the hot players out of the equation. Stephanie White's reluctance to go to players like Kelsey Mitchell or Cunningham when they are clearly in a groove is a glaring coaching flaw. Another key point raised by Caitlin Clark in a recent interview is White's refusal to lean into hero ball or ISO basketball. This is a tactic that many teams in the WNBA and in basketball at large are increasingly embracing. When a player is cooking, you go to them. Whether it's Kelsey, Mitchell, Caitlin Clark, or any other player, if they're hot, they should be given the ball and allowed to create. However, White's philosophy seems to be that everyone should have an equal share of the ball, leading to situations where the team stagnates. When it's most crucial to put the ball in the hands of the player who's been the most effective. When a player like Kelsey Mitchell is on a hot streak, you want to keep feeding her, especially when the game is tight and every possession matters. Instead, we often see the Fever pass the ball around the perimeter without any real plan or effort to get Mitchell a shot, and it's not just Kelsey. Sylvia Cunningham should also be taking more shots when she's open and feeling it. But, again, that's not happening. It's incredibly frustrating to watch, especially because it feels like the Fever are more concerned with spreading the wealth than with actually trying to win games. Another major issue is the way Aaliyah Boston has been used this season. Boston is a talented player with a diverse skill set, but she hasn't been coached to exploit her full potential. While she has shown flashes of being a dominant force in the paint, she's also a very capable mid-range shooter. Yet, for some reason, we rarely see her attempt mid-range jump shots. Instead, she's forced into traffic in the post where she's either getting blocked or swarmed by defenders. Boston's strength lies in her versatility, and it's puzzling that the coaching staff hasn't designed more plays to get her the ball in spots where she can thrive, like at the elbow or at the foul line. It's not just a matter of Boston's potential. It's about recognizing what's working and sticking with it. When her layups aren't falling and she's getting blocked in the paint, Why not try something else? Boston has a reliable mid-jumper, and she's proven she can hit it. Yet, time and time again, we see her forced into situations where she's trying to score in a crowded paint. The coaching staff should be encouraging her to shoot more mid-range jumpers, but that's not happening, and that's a coaching oversight that needs to be addressed. Going back to the team's overall performance against the Liberty, there were stretches where the Fever looked like they could pull away. They showed some life early in the game, and Kelsey Mitchell was a big reason why. But despite her strong performance, the Fever went on a long scoring drought in the fourth quarter, and once again, they failed to turn to their best players when they needed them most. If you're Kelsey Mitchell, you know the ball is going to find you when you're hot, but that wasn't the case in this game. In the fourth quarter, with the game on the line, the Fever should have been drawing up plays for Mitchell and Cunningham, but instead, they resorted to their typical ball movement, which, while it's nice to see in the flow of the game, becomes ineffective when the team is in a slump. The Fever needed a quick jolt of offense, and the answer was simple: give the ball to Kelsey Mitchell and let her go to work. Yet that's not what happened, and it cost the Fever the game. As for Caitlin Clark, the situation around her injury continues to be confusing. After her recent injury, the Fever initially listed her as questionable for the next game. Despite the fact that it was clear she wasn't going to be able to play, the coaching staff has continually downplayed the significance of her injuries, which only adds to the frustration of fans and players alike. When Clark was ruled questionable, fans were left with the hope that she could return soon, but it quickly became apparent that she would be out for much longer. This lack of clarity on her status creates unnecessary confusion and sets unrealistic expectations. It's understandable that teams want to keep injury reports close to the vest, but there's a level of honesty that fans and the team deserve. Instead of labeling Clark as questionable or day-to-day, it would be better to just provide a realistic timeline for her return. If she's expected to be out for 2 weeks, say so. Fans shouldn't have to keep guessing when their star player will be back. The uncertainty around Clark's injury has added another layer of frustration to an already disappointing season. Watching the Fever this season has been a roller coaster of emotions. While there are moments of excitement such as when Kelsey Mitchell gets into a rhythm or when the team manages to stay close in games, it's been overshadowed by poor coaching decisions and a lack of consistent playmaking. The Fever's style of play has been slow and disjointed, which isn't something fans are accustomed to seeing. Under the previous coach, we saw a much faster, more dynamic Fever team that thrived in transition. But now, it feels like the team is stuck in neutral. Fans want to see a team that plays fast, that capitalizes on transition opportunities, and that lets its best players shine. But instead, we're watching a team that too often settles for contested shots and slow, methodical, offensive sets that don't seem to suit the strengths of the players on the roster. It's clear that Kelsey Mitchell thrives when the pace is quick, and yet she's not being utilized properly in these situations. Her scoring output should be much higher, especially in a game without Caitlin Clark, yet she's barely getting up enough shots. With the Fever's season slipping away, it's hard to remain optimistic.